Most people don't realize how much of their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions pulling details about you from public records and the internet, then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance. All backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might just sell credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of that together at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/prevent. Protect yourself now at aura.com/prevent.
Meet Keith, loving dad, board game champ, bus driving pro.
I drive 65,000 miles in my bus each year. If people knew what I know, lives could be saved. Like how there are some things I simply can't see. On my route the other day, a car tried to sneak past me and ends up right in my blind spot. I turned slowly, so accident avoided. But no car should be in the blind spot for a 40,000-pound bus. It's our roads. It's our safety.
Visit www.sharetheroadsafely.gov.
I think the engine's stalling out on me.
Yeah, that don't sound right.
Dang, got a lot more miles to go.
Nah, be okay, mate. You ride with Geico Motorcycle Insurance and got their 24/7 emergency roadside service. They'll be here with a tow in no time.
Good, because these boots weren't made for walking.
Those riding boots are pretty sweet.
Oh, you like?
Do you think they come in a size 1 inch?
I don't know.
It feels good to ride with help. It feels good to Geico. Emergency roadside service is optional coverage.
Hey everybody, this is the Brülosophy podcast. I am your host, Marshall Schott, and we have made it to episode 440, which means it's time for another Brü A. Joining me to answer a bunch of listener-submitted questions is contributor Jordan Folks.
I love these episodes because we really get to think on our feet. You know, the normal episodes, we spend so much time prepping all the science, all the background research, but we just get to go in blind, and it's just really fun to kind of nerd out on some topics that we didn't necessarily dictate the direction that they would go.
Oh, yeah. I love doing these. They're always a blast, and I love especially the fact that we have kind of a rotating cast of co-hosts on these Brü A's, so I get to hear the perspectives of other contributors. The questions that our patrons are asking lately are so good, and we've got some of, in my opinion, this is one of the better batches of questions that our patrons have asked us. Now, just a reminder that one of the many benefits of being a patron of Brülosophy is that we prioritize their questions for these Brü A episodes. So if there's something that you've wanted to know, or perhaps you've emailed a question that we just haven't responded to, your best bet for getting it answered while also getting rewarded for helping us to stay around is to become a patron, who are the amazing people who support us over at patreon.com/Brülosophy, where by making a small monthly pledge, anywhere from $1 to $15, they receive rewards like access to unpublished contributor recipes, unique benefits at YakimaValleyHops.com, and an invitation to a monthly live Brü Day with a contributor of Brülosophy, among other things, like having their questions prioritized on episodes like this. Huge thanks to all of our current patrons. You are the reason that everyone else gets to listen to us for free, and we love you for that because we really enjoy doing this. If you're interested in learning more about the rewards you can get for supporting us in that way, head over to patreon.com/Brülosophy to check it out now. Another easy way to help us out is by using the links found at Brülosophy.com/support when you're shopping online. Your experience doesn't change at all, and we get a tiny little commission that sort of helps us to stay afloat here. And finally, if you wouldn't mind, please take a few seconds to leave a rating and review of this show in Apple Podcasts or wherever it is you listen to podcasts, as that helps those who may not be familiar with us to more easily find the show. Feedback is brought to you by Clawhammer Supply, who are known for their awesome all-in-one electric brewing systems. I've brewed on both their 120 and 240-volt systems. Jordan, you're brewing on their 240-volt system. These things are awesome, efficient, easy to use with a relatively small footprint. You're not going to be disappointed with one of these units. Plus, the guys behind the company run an amazing YouTube channel, which you can find by searching YouTube for Clawhammer Supply. I guarantee you've probably already watched their videos before. If you're in the market for electric brewing gear or even just, well-priced kettles and such, make sure to check out Clawhammer Clawhammer Supply over at clawhammersupply.com. And don't forget to let them know that Brülosophy sent you when you're checking out. That's clawhammersupply.com. All right, listener, this is going to be an interesting bit of feedback here. Listener, I think it's Parik Kyo is how you say it. Irish name spelled Padrake Kioff, it looks like, but I think that you pronounce it Parik Kyo. He wrote in with a thought on the whole AI thing that you and I touched on a few weeks ago, Jordan. He said, just another thought that I don't think I've heard mentioned yet. I wonder how many of the people who wrote in complaining that you used it, AI that is, for BJCP descriptions also have no problem dumping double-digit gallons down the drain from an RO filter for a brew day.
Yeah, that's one thing that I really hate about brewing is the amount of water waste that there is. Luckily, I live in an area that's very flush with water, no pun intended, and so it's not as bad here. But yeah, with my chiller, I try to collect a couple kegs of it to reuse for the cleaning, but it makes too much wastewater making 2 10-gallon batches that I'm often trying to get, below 60 degrees for my final temperature. And so there's a bit of wastewater there, and I hate to see it go down the drain, but it's just a lot. But I have a buddy here. He brews in his basement and doesn't have a floor drain. And so he has to collect all of it. Huh. And so when you're doing that, you're probably going to be, pretty mindful of not, minimizing your wastewater if you have to collect all of it in the bucket in your basement so it doesn't flood.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I want to clarify something first. We didn't actually hear from that many people about this. In fact, I believe it was just one person whose comment that we actually read on that episode. That was the only person who reached out. And I don't think they were doing it to be cheeky, or I think they were just asking us like, hey, what are your thoughts on this? If I was vague about it then, I want to clarify that I too struggle with the purported environmental impact of AI, the whole data centers and all that. Screw those companies, screw the billionaires behind those companies. That is not, I'm against that. So again, I'm not anti-AI necessarily, but I struggle with the morality and the ethics behind what those AI companies are doing. I'm also aware that different people have different agendas, and I'm incredibly cynical about extreme claims from either side of any issue, which is why I refuse to accept them without some semblance of evidence to back those claims up. I mean, that's just the way I live my life. I will not accept as fact any claim that doesn't have some evidence to back it up. Again, that's just a Marshall thing. Now, I'm also a user of an RO filter for my brewing. In fact, I just bought a brand new one and tested it out last week, which Jordan, I was sending you photos of, during which I actually measured the ratio of usable filtered water to the unusable or trash water, which is what I call it. So as soon as I got to the 5-gallon mark in a bucket of 5 gallons of filtered RO water, there was about just a bump over 8 gallons of that trash water for a waste ratio of about 1.5 to 1. Now, I have a feeling that it was that good, that ratio was so low because the filter is brand new, and that over time, as I continue using the RO filter, the waste will increase a bit. Now, I'm referring to it as waste, but I think the key is in what we end up doing with that water. While it is unusable, at least for me, for brewing with, I don't want that super hard water, high TDS water to brew beer with. It's perfect for watering plants. What I did with my 8 gallons of wastewater last week was pour it onto the parts of my grass that start to turn brown in the summertime because the sprinklers just don't reach them as well. That to me isn't waste. You're reusing the water. So a little bit different in my opinion than AI data centers not giving two shits about the communities that they're ruining by building, contaminating their water, taking their water, doing all of that stuff. So I'm not just dumping it down the drain. I am repurposing it. I think another one that you could have pointed out too, Parik, is the waste that comes from chillers. My immersion chiller, I waste way more water, legitimately waste it. I watch it going down my driveway every time I chill a batch of wort, certainly more than when I'm doing my RO. And again, I try to reuse that water, but the first, 10 gallons or so is way too hot for me to throw on. At least I think it's too hot to water plants with. So I just let it go down the drain. So that is wasteful. Brewing is ultimately a wasteful, thing that we do, as is everything that we do in life. It's how we approach it and how we try to reduce that waste. In my opinion, That's important. So I'm sure there are people out there who don't repurpose their wastewater. And if they also happen to be concerned about the water wasted by AI centers, yes, I'd be curious to hear how they square that circle as well. So thank you so much for the message, Parik. This is a fascinating topic that you could tell I could spend way more time on, but we don't have it here. So if you have show feedback, you could send it to feedback@brülosophy.com or drop us a note on social media. Don't forget to snag yourself some badass Brülosophy merch, which you can find over at brülosophy.com/shop. We're offering more options than we ever have before, from t-shirts, hoodies, and hats to fanny packs, shorts, coffee mugs, tank tops, mobile phone cases, stickers, and way more things. We've done our best to keep prices reasonable, and international shipping is available. Again, that's brülosophy.com/shop. You'll click a link, one of the product images on that page, and it will redirect you to our Dashery store, or you can go directly there by clicking the link in the description of this episode.
You didn't start a business just to keep the lights on. You're here to sell more today than yesterday. You're here to win. Lucky for you, Shopify built the best converting checkout on the planet. Like the just one tapping, ridiculously fast acting, sky-high sales stacking, champion of checkouts. That's the good stuff right there. So if your business is in it to win it, win with Shopify. Start your free trial today at shopify.com/win.
Stop guessing and start perfecting your craft with Brewfather, the ultimate tool for recipe design. Brewfather Premium unlocks advanced inventory tracking, tilt integration for real-time fermentation monitoring, and seamless cloud sync across all of your devices. But wait, there's more. Premium Plus just changed the game with Brewfather's brand new AI recipe integration. Whether you're looking to clone a rare commercial classic or need a creative spark for a unique grain bill, Brewfather AI helps you build balanced, world-class recipes in seconds. Brewing is a science. Make it art with Brewfather Premium Plus by visiting brewfather.app today. That's brewfather.app. Better beer is just a click away. Massive props to our patrons who not only fund what it is we do here so that you can get this show in your ears for free, but they also submit all of the questions for these episodes, which are a lot of fun to answer. So the first one comes from Sean Bernard, who says, and actually, quick little note first. I don't know about you, Jordan, but I do not prepare answers to these questions ahead of time. I answer these off the cuff. You're going to notice from time to time that somebody asks a really more detailed, specific question that we just don't have a good response to. And I'm not going to go look up the answer in a way that, somebody who asked it could easily do or probably already has done. So if we do that, throw us a bone. We're just trying to have a little bit of fun here. So the first question comes from Sean Bernard. He says, I've heard that high yeast attenuation can increase IBU. Is this true? And if so, can you elaborate on the reasons? Also, do you plan for it in recipe design or just let it ride?
Yeah, I don't think that it increases IBU from like a scientific perspective in terms of the quantifiable bitterness units that exist within the liquid. However, it does increase the perception of bitterness. And so the on the tongue, 20 IBUs in a 1004, one Plato beer versus 20 IBUs in a beer that finished at more like 1020 is going to taste way different. Specifically, it's going to be perceived as more bitter in the higher attenuated beer, even if the measured IBUs in the lab are the same. And it's you can also kind of achieve this with carbonation as well. That's another lever that you can use to enhance that perception of bitterness. And possibly maybe even pH. And there's just something about the way that your mouth perceives this liquid once there's not a ton of malt, thickness or residual sugar gravity, etc. You just really are able to taste that bitterness better. And so it's certainly a lever that you can use. In terms of me for planning for recipe design, I guess it's all kind of part of the gestalt, as you would say. And so I'm considering FG, IBUs, etc. And so I don't know if I'm specifically this beer is going to attenuate 2 more points than that one, so I made her decrease the IBUs by 2. But it certainly is something to think about as you're creating the total package and recognizing that a lower FG is going to allow the bitterness to shine through a bit more.
Exactly. There's nothing you said that I wasn't going to say as well. The only point that I'll add is that, Sean, IBU, I know a lot of people kind of use the word IBU or the initialism IBU just in reference to bitterness. Those are actually different. IBU is an objectively measurable unit. It is the number that, we predict it, when we're using Brewfather and all of that stuff. It's way wrong. I mean, all of the the predictive calculators that we use for quote IBU are going to give you a different number than if you put it under a mass spec and you actually test it out. But that is an objective number. So like you said, Jordan, attenuation is not correlated with IBU. It's correlated with perceived or the impression of bitterness. And I tend to think, even though those residual sugars, as we've shown over and over and over again in our mash temperature experiments, aren't necessarily perceptible side by side, that as those sugars go down, which is a function of fermentation and attenuation, as those go down, that bitterness is staying exactly the same. It just becomes more perceivable. That's how I view it. So yes, I do think it's something to consider when you're designing recipes, but I think that 99% of brewers who have designed even a single recipe don't really consider it actively. Like you said, Jordan, it's just a part of the gestalt of designing a recipe. So.
All right. Well, Jeremiah Pickard asks or says, picture this. Scientists have discovered that the world will end due to an asteroid colliding with the Earth. It's inevitable. There's no way of stopping it. After all of the obvious things have been taken care of, what beer do you have while waiting for the inevitable? Do you sit outside to watch or stay inside and just let it happen? Personally, I'm out in the yard watching, listening to old 1-minute beer reviews with Jersey and Tim while drinking copious amounts of the Nightman Leaveth by Odd Side Ales. It's an imperial milk stout aged in rye whiskey barrels. Love everything y'all do.
We love you too, Jeremiah. And I don't know how satisfying my response is going to be, but I am taking probably Weinstefan's original and just drinking the hell out of that until the asteroid hits, because it's refreshing. It never gets old to me. It has everything that I love in a classic continental Pils or Helles, really. I love that beer. And so if I could just have an ice chest of fresh, Weihenstephaner original or Hofbrau, I mean, all those classic, Bavarian lagers, I would be in heaven for the however long it takes for the asteroid to hit. So that's what I'm doing.
I actually like this question because you often hear of the desert island beer, and I think in the past I said something like Bitburger or Rathaus Pils or something like that, because you want something that's refreshing but flavorful. But for the end of the world, I kind of like his answer: a big barrel aged imperial stout. I think that would probably be my choice if I only get to pick one. But what I'm doing is I'm gonna have a bottle share, and it's like, let's bust out the cellar, start burning through these giant 15% barrel aged beers that I have stockpiled in my basement, and have a Pilsner and an IPA in between each one to kind of refresh the palate.
Yeah, you're making me. This is what I love about these questions. Is now I'm like, well, the fact that the end of the world is near does absolutely contextually change the way I think about it. It's not the desert island beer, and I think I may have been answering from that. The thing is I don't know how satisfying like a big. When I drink them now, I don't have anything holding me back from drinking a bunch of it if I want to. I have a couple sips and I'm like, whew, I'm ready for a Pilsner.
Yeah.
So I think that for me, I would want to be so drunk if the asteroid's coming that I'm not worried as much about the asteroid coming. And that would be way more fun with an ice chest full of, relatively low ABV, crisp, clean lager for me. Whereas, chugging a 12%, imperial stout or barley wine or whatever I'd be like, God damn it, I wish I had a Pilsner. Well, I need to get this on faster.
Well, that's the thing. It's the end of the world, so you can pop the bottle, try a couple ounces, and then throw the rest down the drain because it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's a good point. And if you had unlimited supply, you could just come back to it whenever you wanted. You know what I would do is I might swap out beer. He asked specifically about beer. I would probably just get like a Macallan, if I could have Macallan 22 or something, like a fucking expensive, nice scotch, and just drink the shit out of it. Because that would be the way I'd want to go out, right? And knowing that it's coming to an end, I'd be like, yeah. I'd go with scotch. That's my answer. I'm gonna drink a shit ton of scotch when the asteroid's coming. All right, so you're gonna stick. What did you go with? What was your answer again for that one?
I think that, it's time to bust out the big barrel-aged stouts, but I think a bottle share sounds nice, so we can try a few things along the way.
Right, but I think that's breaking the rules. You can only pick one, so it sounds to me like you're going with Jeremiah on this one, and that you're sticking with the big beer. All right, cool. All right, that's your answer there, Jeremiah. So I'm drinking Scotch, and you'll be drinking huge beers with Jordan. So, all right, Leaf asks, this is a good one, and we're gonna have to do some thinking on it, I think. But he says, if you owned a brewery with 10 taps on the wall, what would the lineup be? Of course, some will be rotating, but let us know what your ideal 10 beers would be on the wall. Jordan, have at it.
All right. So I'd probably do 2 different West Coast IPAs with different, hop varieties, a West Coast Pils, and then we got to get into the lager territory. So probably a German Pils, a German Helles, a Czech Pale Lager, a Czech dark lager. I'm at 7 right there. And then maybe like a Saison or some sort of Belgian, beer, a sour beer, traditional mixed fermentation, of course, never kettle soured. And then a giant barrel-aged imperial stout. That's 10.
Okay, I'm writing mine down right now. So give me a second here. You would have a giant imperial aged stout. You would want that on tap of for your 10?
Yeah, it's nice because as a taster going into a brewery, you don't have to commit to 12 ounces, 750 milliliters or whatever of 15% barrel-aged stout. You really only need a couple ounces of that, so it's really nice to have it on tap so you can just get a little taster.
Yeah. Okay. Mine is going to be interesting here. This is making me realize what I love and what I want to brew next. So here's where I'm at right now. So I've got Czech Pils, German Pils, a Helles, a Munich Helles, a Vienna Lager, a Schwarzbier, a West Coast Pils, a British Golden Ale. So far, that's 7. A Potter's Beer, which I believe is you could get away with like a Belgian Ankle or a single, right? But I really would want that low ABV with just that beautiful Belgian character. I would probably, so I've got two more that I need to put on there, and I want to be really selective with this. I would probably go with something like a classic American brown ale. And then I think I would have to have a nice basic West Coast IPA. So there you have it. So I'm going brown ale, West Coast IPA, Potter's Beer, British Golden Ale, West Coast Pils, Schwarzbier, Helles, Vienna Lager, German Pils, and Czech Pils, because I think drinking those next to each other would just be so much fun.
And don't forget,
would you drink at my tap room?
Well, it's funny how similar our ethos were, and I would gladly take any of those on my wall as well. I will say though, we're going to have the right taps, right? So we're going to have the Lucre faucets for those Czech beers. Maybe you have a cask, beer engine option for your American brown ale. Let's have some fun with it.
Oh, dude, that'd be so fun. Actually, anybody who wants to experience what my ideal tap room, tap wall is, if you live in Denver, you know where would you go in Denver to drink these types of beers?
Well, for the IPA, Westbound and Down, for the German Lager, Bierstadt, and for the Czech Lager, Cohesion.
Yes, I would say just go to Bierstadt because they tend to have the one time I've been there, they have had somewhat of a variety. If you live in Portland, you can go to Wayfinder. They have excellent. I believe they make all of these on rotation throughout the year. If you're in the Hood River area, you could go to Freem. They have great English beers. If you live up in Washington, check out Chuckanut. They always, these are lager focused breweries that also make ales beautifully. Those are my ideal places. Like, those are my favorite places to drink. When we met up in Portland, you met me at Chuckanut. Like, I love what they do and how they do it. So I would probably just be a copycat and kind of model my tap room after what they're doing. The beers and everything.
All right. Well, let's move on to Austin Smith's question. He asks, what are your favorite sports to watch, play? And what sport do you wish you knew how to play?
My absolute favorite sport to watch, my wife and I were just talking about this last night, is football, American football. We've been watching, all of the FIFA stuff, and it's exciting and it's fun. We watch baseball throughout the year. We're big Seattle sports fans, so we keep track of the Mariners. Football is just so much more fun for us than any of those other sports. I really, really love football season. We have get-togethers almost every game, every Sunday, and the Seahawks won the Super Bowl, so we're extra excited for the upcoming season. Absolutely favorite sport to watch without question is American football. I enjoy throwing a football around. I do not enjoy pain, so I never played football in high school. I have zero interest in being somebody who plays that sport. So to play, God, what would be my favorite sport to play? Basketball. I loved basketball. I did play that, in recreational leagues until I was pretty much out of high school. I don't really play it much anymore, but as a sport, I do still really enjoy shooting hoops. But these days, what sport do I play? I mean, I like pub shuffleboard. Is that a sport? Darts.
Not a sport. Not a sport.
Not really. Not a sport. Yeah, you're gonna get a lot of shit for that, Jordan. I love darts. Like, I really love technical games. Cornhole is great. Like, I would probably say cornhole is my favorite sport to play if we're going to classify that as a sport.
That's not a sport.
It's on ESPN though, dude. They call it a sport.
Maybe the Ocho.
So I don't know. Classic sports, I would have to go with basketball, I guess. And then what sport do I wish that I knew how to play? I think the thing that I am the most in, we watch the Olympics my wife is obsessed with the Olympics. Like, we're going to go down to Los Angeles in 28 to watch some. And the thing that, like, I always, when I was a kid, my favorite movie to this day is like one of my top 10 favorite movies is Rad, the BMX movie. And I always wanted to be good at that. I skateboarded when I was in junior high and high school. I got pretty decent at it, but it never felt as satisfying as and it's probably because of my, adoration of Crew Jones and the movie Rad. Yeah, I wish I was good at BMX. I wish I had the balls to to go off big ramps and do crazy things like that. That's what I wish I could do better. And I remember watching, I forget if it was what year the Summer Olympics were, when I think his name is Modest Greenbergs. He's a Latvian BMXer who ended up taking gold, which was so exciting because of our ties to the Latvian culture and all of that. And again, just reinvigorated my wish to be good at BMX. But there's no way at 45 years old you're gonna find me on a BMX bike at this point. So.
Yeah, I would say that a sport has to have physical exertion, and so things that you can drink a pint at the pub during, like, that's a game of skill. That's not a sport. So I'm in the. I don't think that NASCAR is a sport either. But obviously, these are challenging tasks that require a lifetime to master, and no one's doubting that. But I'm probably the worst co-host for this question. I don't watch sports. I don't care about sports. If I had to pick one, I do like the game of basketball. I don't watch a ton of it, but I watched the last NBA Finals game the last couple of years. Super cool sport, super beautiful, and I wish I could play it. Honestly, I never was took YMCA basketball camper thing as a kid. I remember in middle school I went to basketball tryouts and seeing these kids with tons of skill at 6th grade, and I was like, I'll see myself out. So I've never really learned how to play basketball. Obviously, in PE as a kid, you learn, go for the cookie jar, stuff like that. And I just, as an adult, I do not have any game. And so I really would love to learn how to play ball, because when friends want to shoot hoops and stuff, it's like, you do not want me on your team. It's just embarrassing. But what I do really enjoy is adventure sports. And so I'm a big skier. In the winter, I ski every weekend. I'm a big cyclist, just a road cyclist. And I'm not crazy. I've got a lot of friends that do they'll ride their bikes what would be the equivalent of a 3-hour drive. I'm not that crazy, but I like riding my bike around town. I've really gotten to indoor rock climbing the last few years.
Nice.
I was bouldering, which is when you don't have any ropes, and I've just transitioned to top rope in the last year. And so I go top rope climb once or twice every week. And hiking's great. I do like mountain biking, but it's been a long time since I've done it, and it's really dangerous. So I'm I don't know if I'm going to get back into that one. I also like paddle sports. I don't really have any watercraft right now, but there was a time in my life I was doing a lot of kayaking. So that's kind of my more Pacific Northwest cliche approach to this question.
Yeah, I think some people would, even though they're not extreme versions of them, I think people kind of tend to classify that as like extreme sports or whatever. That's what I find far more entertaining than most classic sports. But there is, I have to admit, like I am just enthralled by I don't find life as being innately meaningful. This is the philosophy side of Brülosophy. We inflect meaning. We create meaning, whether that's through religion or through our, investment in things like sports and wanting to see our team win. We know it doesn't matter. When the Seahawks won, my life did not get benefited in any objective way whatsoever. But there is something about the camaraderie and the shit talking other teams. Like we live in Niners country down here, and we are Seahawks fans. We are like the worst rivals. We hate each other as teams. That's fun to me. Like I love talking shit with my Niners fan friends, and they love talking shit with me. And we drink beers and we hug after each game, anyways. And there's something about that I get, and I love the thought of like old, back in the 50s and 60s, like dads who the NFL is just coming up and like sitting at their little square TV and rooting on this team. It doesn't even matter, but we do it anyways. And so that I kind of like, that's what I enjoy about the classic American football. And that's why I think that's my favorite sport, is that it just feels like I'm tapping into American history and pastimes and all that stuff. So, okay. Anyways, go Seahawks. We're going to kick ass this year. All right. Next question. Al Broff says, homebrew recipes often seem to include 4 to 8 specialty malts. Man, I don't know whose recipes you're looking at. Carapils for body, Carafoam for head retention, a crystal malt for sweetness, another crystal malt for complexity, Victory or biscuit malt for toast, Munich for maltiness, and so on. Yet many commercial breweries produce outstanding beers using surprisingly simple grists. Do you think homebrewers have a tendency to chase flavor by continually adding specialty malts when they'd see a bigger improvement by focusing on process variables like water chemistry, fermentation, mash profile, and packaging? Have your experiences or experiments changed your thinking on how simple a recipe can be?
Yes, absolutely. I agree with this so much. I think that what Al's referencing is the old school homebrew recipes that you would see where it did have a ton of specialty malts. And I think that probably thanks to following the commercial brewery world, a lot of homebrewers have simplified. And I mean, honestly, I could make so many different amazing beers with just Pilsner malt. I don't need any specialty malts for the vast majority of these beers. And I totally agree. Let's focus on things like water chemistry, fermentation, mash, packaging. You don't need to be adding 0.5% of biscuit malt to this beer for this complexity. It's just really my experiences in simplifying my beers have absolutely changed my thinking on this. And I am definitely team simple.
Without a doubt. What I feel like he might be referring to, like you said, like the old school homebrew recipes that you would pick up from the homebrew shop or whatever. But also, I think new brewers, there's this excitement when you come in and you start designing your own recipes. My brother, my twin brother, is a perfect example. He, when I first introduced him to brewing, I was out in New York. We were staying with him for a couple of weeks, and we went out and got everything to get him started brewing. And then we brewed up one of my recipes. It was quite simple. I'd been brewing for over a decade at that point. And then he would start emailing me like, hey, I want to make this, brown ale. What do you think of this grist? And it'd be like 12 different grains. And I'd ask him like, why in the world are you using all of these? Where'd you get that from? And he's like, well, I read the description and that sounds like it'd be good in there. That actually makes sense to me, even though those descriptions have to be there. We have to know what a grain, or like have some understanding of what a grain is going to contribute to beer. But it doesn't always contribute it in the way that it's described. Does that make sense? What I'm saying there? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so my thing is that I feel like with experience, you start to whittle down what really matters. And maybe you develop an understanding as a brewer of what you're really going for a specific style. So I just went over the last 3 beers that I brewed. The one that had the most grains in it had 5 grains, and it was like a Czech amber lager. And the reason it has that is because they're very specific grains that I have to use to, one, achieve the color, but also the flavor profile. There are people out there who will make Czech amber lagers with 2 grains. You're probably one of them, Jordan. So yeah, there are grains or styles that I'm going to brew with that have more than, 1 or 2 malts. The other 2 recipes I looked at had 2 grains. That's it. that's not a brag. That's not I'm not trying to say like, oh, look what I can get away with. That's just a function of experience and knowing what I want in the beer. So yeah, have our experiments changed the way I think about this? I would say that the experiments have had more of an impact on the way I approach process than it has the way I approach recipe design. When I first started designing recipes, I had already adopted the simple is better mentality. So for me, no. What has changed though is my experience with newer or my experience with ingredients in general. So for example, when I started using pale chocolate, the first time I used it at a higher amount than say 5%, I didn't really get out of it what I was hoping. Once I dropped that down to 2%, it started hitting for me. I started to get that nice nuttiness that I expect from that malt. So I only use, a max of 2% in my beers of pale chocolate. Even if I'm using chocolate malt, regular chocolate malt, I might toss in just a little whisper of that pale chocolate to get that characteristic. I think that's what the experiments and my own experiences have had the biggest influence on. So.
All right. So let's finish up this segment with a question from our buddy Will Allwert, who asks, if you could get any car vehicle, regardless of year, make, model, or price, what would it be and why?
All right. So in the way that you just don't have what I have when it comes to sports, I do not have the things so many other people out there have when it comes to car. I couldn't care less the car that I drive based on the car or like how fast it is or how tough it looks. I am a pragmatist when it comes to vehicles. Do I like having vehicles that offer me things that make my life better, improve my quality of life? Absolutely. I want AC. I want the tech in my vehicles. I want, safety features. I don't really care if it's fast. I don't care how it looks necessarily. So for me, the option would be very pragmatic. I think if I could go out right now and get any car that I wanted, I think it would probably be one of the brand new VW electric buses. In part because I grew up, my mom owned 2 classic VW buses when I was a kid. So there's that nostalgia aspect to it. I do think they look kind of funny, but I also get free charging at work. I work for the state of California. And so I could drive an electric vehicle there and have it charge for free and never have to pay, at least for now, never have to pay for gas again. And I live 40 miles away from where I work. So the reason I would go with a VW, I'm not a big Volkswagen fan in general. I've owned a Jetta. It did not work out for me. We had all kinds of issues with it, but the bus would fit all of my stuff. It almost serves the purpose of like a truck and a car. It's electric and it's new enough that I wouldn't feel like it's going to break down soon. And that matters more to me than how fast it goes, how cool it looks in my garage, all that stuff. So,
yeah, those are cool. Unfortunately, they discontinued those already though.
Did they already discontinue them?
Yeah, they were too.
I didn't know that.
They were too expensive to make. No one was buying them, but so they still, the ones that were made still exist. So get one while you can.
Yeah, I think they were like $80,000. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why I say I'm not going to go spend $80,000 on a VW electric bus. But if I could get it for free, whatever.
But you currently drive a gas car, right?
Oh yeah, I drive a truck. We pull a trailer. I'm a pragmatist. I am not your typical truck driver. Don't get me wrong there, but we go camping and pull a trailer, and you can't do that with a Pilot.
Yeah,
so
right.
I drive a GMC Sierra. Yeah.
Right. So I'm a big EV evangelist. I work in that space. And dude, I'm telling you, you got to get one. It is life-changing. Because electricity is more expensive in California, but still it's going to be cheaper than gas, which is notably expensive in California as well. But with the free workplace charging, it's going to be life-changing, dude. And it's so nice not to have to go to the gas station. It's so much easier. And the F-150 Lightning totally can tow. The only problem is when you're towing, it kind of like kills your range. But there are some other solutions out there. And Ford is coming out with a new one as well. But that kind of leads me to my answer. So I kind of have a bit of a dream car for me. I got I had the original first model of the Subaru Solterra, their EV. And it was like kind of maybe other than Rivian, like kind of the first mountaineering EV that exists. It handles so well going down a snowy mountain. The the way that an electric vehicle works in terms of like the motor and the traction and stuff, it's really good for safely driving down an icy hill. And so I recently upgraded via a lease upgrade option to the brand new Solterra that came out this year, and it has more range and it has faster charging. And so that's been a huge life upgrade, because the last model I think was only 220 miles of range, and this is more like 290. So if I could get any other car, I would, wave a magic wand and make mine have like 500 miles of range, because I love the car as it is. But since I can't wave that magic wand, I think I would go for Rivian. They have a battery pack version that goes up to, I think, 420 miles. And so that would be great just to have the additional miles. The only thing about the Rivian is it's really big, and it probably wouldn't fit in my like tiny little driveway I have like a subterranean driveway. So you have these like walls on either side. I don't know if I could get out of it by parking it in my driveway. And I live in the inner city, and so parking on the street can be kind of busy. So if I can like also make my driveway bigger, the answer would be Rivian. But really, I just want more range. And so I love my existing car, but if I could have more range, I would be really happy with that.
Well, I'll finish on this, that I am currently, we've got, all of our kids are relatively same age. So we got a car for our 17-year-old. She got mom's old car. We upgraded mom's car. My son turned 16 in a month. We went out and bought him a used, Mazda or whatever, that he'll be driving. And so then our youngest daughter just turned 13. So she's got 3 more years. She is going to get the truck. The thing is, 90% or more of the miles that I put on my vehicle is just driving to and from work. So I am cool with having the truck just for my daughter and then for camping, right? Mm-hmm. My kids, when they drive around town, we're talking 2-3 miles. It's not that big of a deal. They're not even driving that much. So for me, what I've been looking at is I'm so glad that Chevy came back with their Chevy Bolt, a very reasonably priced EV that gets quite good range, and the reviews on it are insanely positive. Now that's the old Bolt. They went offline. They stopped making Bolts, I believe, for about a year and a half. But the 2026 models just dropped. Timmy Tim works for Chevy at one of the local dealerships as a tech there. So I've seen these, and that's kind of where my eyes have been glued for. But that's not my dream car by any means, But that is kind of what I'm looking at. So I may be an EV driver sooner than later. I will not drive a Tesla ever, and as long as Elon is associated with that company. So on that note, we've got to take a short break. We'll be right back with more Brü A.
You didn't start a business just to keep the lights on. You're here to sell more today than yesterday. You're here to win. Lucky for you, Shopify built the best converting checkout on the planet. Like the just one tapping, ridiculously fast acting, sky-high sales stacking, champion of checkouts. That's the good stuff right there. So if your business is in it to win it, win with Shopify. Start your free trial today at shopify.com/win.
There's no denying that stainless steel is the best material for brewing equipment, and Delta Brewing Systems offers some of the lowest prices on high-quality stainless gear, like the Firm Tank, which in addition to holding 8 gallons or 30 liters of work, comes with a domed lid to even further reduce the chances of a messy blow-off. Plus, it can hold up to 4 psi of pressure for closed transfers. Delta Brewing Systems also has their own line of brew kettles, as well as one of the lowest-priced all-in-one electric brewing systems out there, and their prices are shockingly low. If you're in the market for legit stainless gear that won't break the bank, do yourself a favor and head over to deltabrewingsystems.com today. Excellent questions so far. I'm excited to get to the next ones. What is the next one, Jordan?
All right. Jeremy Stoner thinks maybe this is a stupid question, but I don't think so. So he's asking, all right, so the strike temperature is always recommended to be above the mash temperature. And so is that because the grain will cool it down to around whatever the target mash temperature is? So he elaborates, why not put in the grain at, say, 60C or 140F or whatever, and simply heat it up to the right temperature for mashing, like 67C or 153F? Is there a scientific reason? What do you think, Marshall?
So you're probably going to speak to this way better than I do, because you regularly step mash, and there are reasons that you hold the mash at these different temperatures. We have done an experiment. I believe Matt Del Fiacco performed this one, where he actually integrated he made the mash at 68 degrees Fahrenheit or 20 C, whatever his brewing water was at before he even heated it up. And then he warmed it up. So he didn't stop anywhere. He just went up until it reached his target mash temperature. And then he mashed from there. And there were some very interesting findings just watching, what that mash ended up looking like, how it performed. If I recall correctly, it got really gummy and kind of stringy. It was very weird. What we know is that at different temperatures, you're activating different enzymes, you're breaking different things down, you're inactivating certain enzymes. So all of that, what we've discovered over the hundreds and hundreds of years that we've been brewing beer, does matter. Now, is it going to create an undrinkable beer, an unfermentable beer? No, you're still going to get it's a very rudimentary process in general. But what we found, I'm talking collectively brewers, in our centuries of making beer, is that probably longer than that, is that if you do it the way that we do it now, in terms of mashing, that there's going to be certain things that you can more easily predict. That's how I like to think about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that what Jeremy's referencing here is a more old school approach when we were using igloo coolers for mashing. And exactly that's why you would make your strike temperature higher, is once you pour it, by hand into your igloo cooler with your room temperature grain, it is going to cool down. Yeah. And that's why we would do it like that. But with all-in-one brewing systems, nowadays, really just mash it, set your strike temperature to your desired mash temperature, because it's going to basically immediately achieve that, or it's going to correct and get there like very quickly. So I think that those days are kind of over, unless you're doing a traditional igloo kind of cooler setup. But if no matter what you're using, you totally can mash in a little bit lower and then heat it up to where you're trying to get. You might get some sort of step mash effect. And so maybe if you're trying to make a super high FG beer, you might not want to do that, because then you get that additional beta amylase from that starting early, cooler rest. You might get additional attenuation. So I would just kind of think about your desired FG, but generally speaking, that's a great way to go about it. Only caveat is if you're looking for a super high FG, maybe don't start low.
Well, I haven't mashed in a cooler in nearly a decade, and I still overheat my brewing liquor. I full volume, as you do. I don't sparge anymore, right? I do the entire volume of mash liquor together. I overheat consistently by 6 degrees Fahrenheit, because I know that will, as soon as I add the grain, that will get me right around what my target mash temperature is. So if I'm going for 148, I as my mash temperature, I heat it up to 154, and that's just what I do, and it works every time. So I get what you're saying, though, that yes, you can, if your target is 150 and you heat your strike water to 150 and you add those grains, for me, that would ostensibly bring that initial temperature down to about 144 Fahrenheit. But I have the ability to very quickly heat it up. And so I don't see that as being an issue necessarily, but I still mash in a slightly warm. So
it's funny. I do the opposite, actually. I don't want to go too high, because I'm always trying to drive attenuation. Typically, I like dry beers, and I don't want to accidentally mash in at 155 when I'm trying to be 145 or whatever. So I'll often do exactly what he described, mash in a couple degrees lower than my target, then dial it in with my claw hammer controller to get where I want to be, so I don't overshoot, because I have the 240 system and it will spike instantly as soon as you start adding heat, and it will overshoot it because it's so powerful. And so that's why I start low and ease my way in. And I'll actually do what's called a coast down. And I would love to do an experiment on this, by the way, where I'll maybe, go start at 144, get it up to like 149, and then drop it, then set it back down to 144 and let it coast down there. And so that ensures the gelatinization has been achieved without getting too much alpha amylase activity by going too high, like 155, and then letting it coast back down to that super attenuative, like kind of 144F range, kind of giving me the best of both worlds.
This is far more interesting than I thought it would be, because I honestly thought everybody did it the way I do it. And now I'm brewing tomorrow, and I'm sitting here thinking, I think I'm going to just I'm going to heat my water to my mash temperature. I'm going to toss the grains in, and then I'm just going to heat it back up. And I'm going to see if that, I mean, I doubt I'll taste a difference, right? But that isn't interesting. The fact that you do that and you make some of my favorite beer on earth, I'm kind of like, well, shit, maybe I've been missing out. So yeah, cool. Thanks for the question. That was a good one. Next one comes from Mark Rose. I'm not entirely sure what he meant. Maybe there's a typo here by this first line, but everything else does make sense. Mark says, what are the, quote, so what's from Brülosophy, unquote? I don't know what that means. But then he goes on to say, many findings, most insignificant, some areas mined more than others, but a lot of data and information, however you look at it. What are the main takeaways, and are they aggregated somewhere for easy new brewer reference? Perhaps the intent is for brewers to mine the data on their own and come up with their own conclusions, which is great, but themes clearly come from the podcasts. Should those themes or takeaways be formalized in some way for others to readily consider? Otherwise, it is the book from Amazon with a 90-minute boil that takes precedence and sets another standard with another new brewer. What are your thoughts on that, Jordan?
Yeah, so I think when he says the so what's, he means, what are the big takeaways? And I was invited to a big homebrew club to give a talk and I did some data collection there a few months ago. And so I made this little PowerPoint to describe what Brülosophy is. Some people in the room had heard of us, some hadn't. And so I wanted to kind of give them a background. And I actually had the same question, like, what are the consistent findings? And I used a little bit of what I knew, but I also did a search, and now everything's, Gemini Copilot, and there is AI, whether you want it or not. And it summarized some of those takeaways. And I don't have them in front of me, but what I remember is we do see that water chemistry does tend to matter, but not mash pH, which is mind-blowing. I do personally shoot for a good mash pH, but we've seen time and time again that tasters really struggle to tell the difference from the function of the pH. But chloride to sulfate ratios really do seem to have a perceptible impact. We've also seen that mash temperature does impact final gravity, but tasters struggle to taste the difference. So even though there's an observable impact organoleptically, it's a bit more on the margins than one might think. There are certain yeast strains that are a little bit more forgiving than one might have originally thought. And we've seen time and time again that, something like Imperial's Global, the Weihenstephan 3470 strain, does pretty darn well at, warmer temperatures than traditional lager enthusiasts might have said. And you can make a pretty decent beer. So those are kind of, the ones that really jump out to me as the big so what's.
Okay, that does make sense now. Yeah, I was just reading it wrong. To me, what Mark is asking, or maybe the way I interpreted his question, though, as I sat here and thought about it, yeah, you answered the generals about the specific, things that we've tested, the all of that. It sounds like what you might be asking, Mark, though, is and what I'm focusing on is your term, the question about, are they aggregated somewhere? They're aggregated on our website, and yes, I do think that. My personal philosophy, I'm kind of anti-expert. I think we need experts, but as soon as, at least my way of thinking about what that term means, as soon as you qualify yourself as an expert, you kind of start shutting out new information. I think the best experts are continuously on a path of exploration and don't view themselves as the expert. Other people view them as such. So I say all that to say that I have never once fancied myself a brewing expert, even though I've brewed more than probably 95%. Same with you, Jordan. All of us at Brülosophy brew way more and do way more, quote, research than most brewers ever will. We are continually learning. With every new experiment, would you agree with me that we learn something from it, right?
Always. And so for me, what my fear would be, let's say that I wrote a book, which, by the way, I have been contacted by publishers. They would love nothing more than to make money off of the work that we do. Believe me. We live in a world where I don't know if that's necessary. And my concern in doing that would be, one, I'd have to acknowledge that the main reason that I agreed to doing it was to make money. I'm okay with that. I have no issues with that. We live in a capitalist society, and that's how we survive. But in doing that, I would have to sacrifice this thing that I find, or that is very important to me, and that is not being a quote authority that people appeal to. I could write about, for example, let's go with water chemistry. I can say in general, wow, we've done all of these experiments that show that water chemistry really does seem to matter. You don't need a book to hear me say that. I don't need to write a book about saying that. The book would have to include details about why it matters.
I wouldn't want anybody to read something that I wrote and think I have to do it the way Marshall does it because that's the way it matters. No, what we've shown is in general, if you add salts, it seems to have an organoleptic impact that you can taste. If you don't, you can still make great beer. Maybe you can tweak the beer to be more what you want by adding a different type or different variety or whatever it is, amounts of brewing salts than I would. I want you to explore that yourself. That's the beauty of existence is that we get to broaden our minds by doing it the way that we want to do it and experimenting with it. And what I love about brewing is that it is just beer. The fact that there are people who get so up in arms about us talking about warm fermenting lagers is wild to me. You don't have to do it. I've never once said that you have to ferment lagers warm. I would never encourage anybody who doesn't want to do it. My encouragement goes to the people who want to have a nice, clean, delicious, crisp lager and don't have the ability to brew it. You might want to consider trying it warm. That's what I like about what we do. So that's kind of my long-winded way of saying that the aggregate is Brülosophy.com. And I feel like what the Brülosophy podcast offers is the more, slightly more opinionated or personal perspectives that we have on the data that we have collected so far. So hopefully that response suffices.
All right, let's get to Will's Babcock question. And it's funny, it's about peppers, and brewers love peppers. I don't know why that is. But, and I mean, if, I had a dime for every first home brewer beer that was a pepper, whatever style. Anyways, if you had to pick a hot pepper to sum up your personality, what would it be? And if you ever saw yourself in or related to a Muppet, which one and why?
All right, I'm going to start with the Muppet one because I am not, and this is going to play into the pepper response as well. I'm not that interesting of a person, and by which I mean I don't have the creative mind that I envy so much in other people. My son has it in just the kid loves manga. He loves what do they call? I don't even comic books, stuff like that. Even as a kid, all my friends were into Star Wars and comics and all of that. And I'd be sitting there going, what do they see in this? Why do I not find this interesting? I have tried watching Lord of the Rings, I think 6 times now. Nothing puts me to sleep like Lord of the Rings. I mean, I'm telling you, I have been fresh off of waking up from a great night's sleep. And my old roommate was like, all right, you're not tired. We're going to try watching it again. And 20 minutes into it, I'm out. I am out. I don't know what's wrong with me. And there are people out there who are like, oh, that you're just making fun of it. No, I'm not. I am falling on my sword here. I'm the fucked up one. I don't know what's wrong with me. You throw a documentary on, I don't care what it's about as long as it's not about some stupid celebrity. I don't care about that. If it's about something that's actually interesting, I'm enthralled. I won't fall asleep. I'm with it. I'll talk about it for days. My brain is not set up for that. So all of that to say, I have never projected myself into a Muppet. So I can't say that I don't even whatever. I loved the Muppet Babies when I was a kid. I loved watching it. And I don't know. I feel like Kermit is he plays the guitar. I play the guitar. So I guess it would be Kermit if I had to choose one. But all of that to answer the hot pepper one, I have to go with jalapeno. Why? Because it's just not that. It's kind of a boring pepper. It's sometimes not spicy. It sometimes is, it tastes like green bell pepper with a little bit of heat. And it's just, I'm just not that exciting of a person, man. So I'm just going to go with jalapeno on that one.
Yeah, I kind of have a crappy answer because I don't know that much about peppers or Muppets. So I guess on the Muppet front, the chef guy, because I make beer and I'm creative culinarily speaking. I don't even know what that Muppet's called. I think that's a Muppet, right?
I think so. I'll look it up while you're answering.
Okay. Yeah. And then in peppers, I honestly don't know that I could name 5 peppers. So I think riffing on your answer, maybe I'll say a Serrano, where it's a little bougier than a basic jalapeno. And so I like a little bit of flavor in my life and I like interesting foods. And so maybe a Serrano because it's just a little bit more interesting than a jalapeno.
Yeah, and arguably slightly more spicy as well. Yeah, I believe you're. I googled it, and it looks like the guy's name is the Swedish Chef. So
that's right.
Big bushy mustache, that dude. So I think that's a great response. Okay, next question. This one comes from Luke in Woodworth, who says, what are some of your favorite whiskeys? What is your go-to weeknight sipper? What bottle do you reach for on a special occasion? Do you drink whiskey?
I'm sorry, guys. You keep asking questions about things I'm not that interested in, and so I don't really have any favorite whiskeys. I don't really drink spirits at home, and so occasionally a friend will give me a bottle for my birthday or something, and it just kind of sits there collecting dust. That being said, I do enjoy good whiskey, and I would definitely, since I've probably bought fewer bottles of whiskey than I have fingers on my hands in my life. Whenever we do an annual backpacking trip with our friends, I'll get a nice bottle and pour it and some in a flask and bring it with me. So I will reach for a nicer bottle because I'm not spending a lot of money in my life on this stuff. So I think the last year I bought Willet, and then I think the year before I got Whistle Pig 10-year. So I don't know that much about this stuff, but I can tell the difference between good whiskey and Jack Daniels, and my preference is solidly for the good stuff.
Yeah, so my favorite whiskey is actually Scotch, and I know that that's kind of contentious. People either love it or hate it, which is weird to me. I will drink any whiskey. I've even come around to Irish whiskey. I really enjoy that as well. But if I'm reaching for a favorite, look, expensive doesn't always mean better. Age doesn't always correlate with better, in my opinion. I absolutely love Macallan 12. To me, that is it's just so perfectly balanced. It's got the perfect scotchiness. It's not too hot. It is so good. So my weeknight sip, I'm not drinking whiskey every day. I promise you that. I'm getting old. My doctor's telling me I got to cut back on everything pretty much. So, but if I'm going to drink whiskey and it's my favorite, that's probably what I'm going for. But I have got a whole bunch of different whiskeys in my closet right now. And I just go back and forth. I love variety. One of my favorite domestic whiskeys is actually from Fry Ranch. And I believe it is their play on bourbon. And if you haven't had Fry Ranch, I've talked about it on the show before. They grow their own grain. They're out of Fallon, Nevada. They grow their own grain, they malt it, and then they make their own whiskey out of it. It's a whole operation that they do from start to finish. And I'm telling you, it is so good. Fry Ranch, if you're listening, please sponsor us. I would love to work with you guys. I love whiskey. So that's a great question, but my response is just so simple. I like basic stuff, and to me, Macallan 12 just hits all those marks. So that's what I'm going for.
All right, well, let's transition to something I actually do have a passion for, which is dry hop beers. So Joey Steckler asks, I've started brewing more dry hop beers lately, and I'm trying to dial in my process. On a recent pale ale, I performed a diacetyl rest around day 6, cold crashed on day 8, dry hopped on day 9, gelatin fined on day 11, and packaged on day 14. The beer may have developed some diacetyl, though, although I'm not sure whether the cause was from cold crashing too early, hop creep, or whatever. So what process do you recommend for timing dry hopping, cold crashing, and gelatin fining while avoiding excessively long dry hop contact times? Is there a particular order of operations you recommend?
All right, Jordan, I'm going to answer very quickly because you are obviously the one who needs to respond to this one, and I take advice from you on this kind of stuff. But my thing would be, pitch your yeast, ferment it out. I always add hops now during fermentation just to scrub any oxygen that's introduced in hopes of reducing cold side oxidation. I don't double dry hop. I just do a single dry hop. And then as soon as fermentation is completely done and there is no, off flavors, I will cold crash overnight, come back the next morning, add gelatin, let it go another 24 hours or so, package from there. I do everything closed with the exception of adding the gelatin, which I just am very gentle about. I like to believe that it's not introducing oxygen. Cold crash, add the gelatin, package, and then carbonate over a day or two, and then I start drinking. So my approach is pretty basic, but I'd love to hear your more detailed response.
Yeah, so this is interesting because they're saying they're doing a diacetyl rest on day 6 for an ale. And I don't really see how you would need or even do a diacetyl rest with an ale because we're already at diacetyl rest temperatures with an ale fermentation. So I think that there's a really simple answer here, and it's ALDC. I add ALDC to every non-phenolic beer I brew. And with dry hop beers, I'm adding it twice. So you add your ALDC at yeast pitch, and then would you add it again on your dry hop? And I will forget it sometimes, and I get frickin' D when I forget it on the dry hop as well. So
Really?
Yeah. And it's pisses me off. So what I've done is I actually have 2 bottles of ALDC, and I keep one with my flowables, and I hopefully will notice it when I'm grabbing my Spectrum for the flowable component of my dry hop. So that's my recommendation. Use ALDC no matter what yeast you're using on these dry hop beers at yeast pitch and when you add the dry hops. But let's go through his process here. So diacetyl rest around day 6. I don't know what that means because you're already at diacetyl rest temperatures. So even with the lager strain, if you're fermenting that at like 60F, you shouldn't be getting too much diacetyl from the base fermentation, but you can get it from that dry hop creep. So they're cold crashing on day 8. I would say watch your yeast. Don't cold crash if it's not finished fermenting. But me personally, I like dry hopping warm. Now, we did do an experiment during COVID testing dry hop temps where one was cold and one's room temp. And it was just the brewer that tested it, and they could not taste the difference reliably between a 66F or 19C dry hop versus 36F or 2C. But me personally, the times that I tried dry hopping cold, I just didn't like the character. I think I get more expression in a standard 60 degree, 65 degree dry hop. My absolute favorite hoppy brewer, North Park, appealing to authority, I'll admit it, they dry hop warm, and what they're doing is working. So that would be my recommendation. I don't think this is necessarily going to be an issue if you're using LDC, but it could go either way with this cold crashed dry hop. If you cold crash too quickly, you have diacetyl in the beer potentially, and then it's stuck. On the flip side, the argument being, well, if you're dry hopping cold, you're not going to get the hop creep. But what if you do, and then the yeast is too cold to actually clean it up? So in my opinion, a warm dry hop is just safer, but I do like the character more. So what I'm doing is finish fermentation. Maybe it's day 7, maybe it's day 10. Add the dry hops warm, 1 day closed, with the ALDC, like I mentioned, put a little bit of CO2 on it, cold crash that in place, then transfer off the dry hops cold into my serving keg that I then add my gelatin or my biofine, and then it's in the package container and it's off to the races, and I start serving it once it's clear. So that would be my recommendation. Dry hop warm, add ALDC twice, and you're not going to have any D.
Yeah, if you're getting diacetyl, take Jordan's advice. I mean, that ALDC is pretty cheap too, and you're not using that much of it, so it lasts a long time. I happen to be, at least based on my flavor standard testing, not terribly sensitive to diacetyl. I've tasted it in beers that are heavily, diacetyl bombs basically, but at lower levels, I think I'm kind of blind to it a little bit. Or maybe I'm not, but I think I am. I've never made like a hoppy beer where I tasted diacetyl. That's why I kind of was surprised when you said that when you don't use ALDC, you taste it. That's crazy to me. I would think that if that's the case and there's other people out there who are sensitive to it or who think they're sensitive to it, why isn't everybody using ALDC, right? I mean, anyways, Troy's got the next question. Joey, if you are getting diacetyl, if you're getting that flavor, just buy some ALDC. And I actually think maybe you agree with me on this, Jordan, that his process is sound and it would work great if he added ALDC at those 2 points that you're saying, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool. All right, Troy Lindsay says, what brewing additives are you using on the regular to prevent oxidation? Brutan B, ascorbic acid, metabisulfites, or others? If so, how are you typically using these additives? How much and when in the brewing, fermentation, packaging process, he says.
Mm-hmm. So I have kind of simplified and streamlined my oxidation prevented additives. I'm just using Brutan B these days. I have used ascorbic acid. I have used the metabisulfites. And these days I'm just using Brutan B. I still got the metabisulfite. Maybe I should add a little bit tomorrow. But so I'm just using Brutan B at this point, and I'm adding it in the mash and at the end of the boil. I'm doing 8 gallons of strike water, and I'm doing 3 to 4 grams of Brutan B that I add directly into the water with my brewing salts. And then my Brutan B at the end of the boil, I just use a little bit of hot water from the kitchen sink and mix that with 1 gram of Brü B, and this is for a standard 5-ish, 6-ish gallon batch of finished beer. And I make that little solution and I pour it in at the 5-minute mark. And then once 1 minute has passed, I add my Werflock tablet. It's really important to keep those separate because they attack positively, negatively charged things differently. And so if you add them together, they can nullify each other. And so, yeah, that's my process.
I don't use any to prevent oxidation. I'm all process. So what I do is mechanical, not chemical, for reduction of cold site oxidation, CSO. And so basically I'm doing closed transfers, doing all that stuff. I have no problem using chemical additives like this. I just don't need it. If I were making hazy IPA, which I just don't brew, if that were my thing, I would just for insurance add a little bit of PMB or SMB, metabisulfites basically, at packaging just to make sure that cold site oxidation doesn't take hold, because I hate oxidized hazy IPA. Ugh. So yeah, but I'm not using. I've never used Brü B. I've never even seen this stuff in real life. I've ascorbic acid. I have some just because I have some, but I've never used it. I have both sodium and potassium metabisulfite on hand. That's mostly to knock the yeast out when I make cider, before I add fruit and stuff like that. So, yeah, that's my response. I'm just not doing much. So.
Yeah, and I will add that occasionally I have to pop open that keg lid when I've done a dry hop, like I've had the floating dip tube get stuck behind the post, or I forgot to add ALDC or something like that, and I'm like, I got to add that because I don't want the D. And so in those cases, if I ever pop open the keg after adding the dry hop, or for some reason like a stuck dip tube, I will add a little bit of SMB, like 0.2 grams or something, to scrub any sort of oxygen that might have been exposed due to the fixing necessary that required me to open the keg. But otherwise, I'm not really doing anything downstream after the mash and the boil. All right, final question for the episode. Owen Dawson asks, I work in mental health, a field that's certainly adjacent to problem alcohol use. I don't tell clients or families that I'm a homebrewer, as there's no need. But I was recently spotted on a post in my local homebrew club's Facebook group, and a client asked me about it. It actually went fine and opened a useful conversation. So it got me thinking, do you try to conceal or omit that you're a homebrewer from anyone? If so, why? Have you ever had a negative response from anyone when you told them you're a homebrewer?
This, I could go on way too long. I am a clinical psychologist in my real life. That's what pays the bills, right? So I can relate with what you're talking about, Owen. And in the same way that I approach beer, any other people listening to this who work in mental health, you're very well acquainted with the idea of, adopting a specific approach. Theoretical orientations is what we refer to them as. I find that to be rather limiting. I have a very interesting way of viewing the human condition. You could probably kind of categorize my general perspective of mental health, or my approach, as existential, humanistic. I don't think that surprises anybody. I don't adhere to anything hardcore. I genuinely believe that we are better off by relating in an authentic, honest way with other people than we are as therapists, right? And that does involve some self-disclosure, unlike the Freudians and the old school psychodynamic folks tended to believe. And maybe there's a place for that, but that doesn't work for me. I'm not saying that I'm going to capitalize during the therapeutic hour by telling my whole story and not letting the other person say anything. What I'm saying is that by connecting on that real level, you're talking about alcohol use, and that's relevant to this show, but I'll use some other examples. To answer your question about the alcohol use first, I feel like, at least in the Western world, that our therapy has been hugely influenced by puritanical views. I don't see alcohol as necessarily being a vice in any way that's different than anything else that could become a vice. So you could talk about food, and we have to have food to survive, but you can also overeat and become insanely overweight, and it can negatively impact your health. You could talk about exercise. You got to have a decent amount of exercise to survive, but if you're overdoing it, you have a disorder. It's the same thing with alcohol. If you're using it and you trust yourself and it's not getting in the way of your work, your family life, or anything like that, there's no amount of self-righteous therapy that is going to convince me that I'm doing it wrong if it's not negatively impacting my life. That's for me as the person to determine for myself. So that's my thoughts on the alcohol use. But I feel like a lot of people these days, this is kind of a controversial opinion that I hold that a lot of my colleagues around the world don't share. So I don't mean to ruffle any feathers, but therapy has become trendy. When you see people posting on social media that they're in therapy or bragging about the fact that they self-diagnose themselves with anxiety or depression or whatever, that's not what we meant when we said we need to have a stronger focus on mental health. That to me is people virtue signaling. They're doing it because they're getting something else out of it. And I'm not sure that's doing a whole world of good for us in the world of mental health. I think we need to pull the reins back a little bit on promoting that side of it because it's wrong. Most people who claim on social media to have depression aren't clinically diagnosed with depression. They're just saying it because they're expecting to get some benefit out of it. That's my opinion, at least. Now, if I'm sitting with a patient and we're talking about something and they say, hey, I was at, so-and-so's place and they mentioned your name and I thought it was you and they said that you brew beer, I'd be like, hell yeah, I brew beer. Yeah, it came up. Cool. Do you brew beer? That's just a human thing. I don't care. I don't hide it from anybody. Like I said, I'm not just going to offer it in a therapeutic session because like you said, Owen, it doesn't really matter. You don't need to, but if it comes up, anything can come up. I don't have an issue disclosing normal things and aspects of my life. We're both human beings. We both live our own lives. One of the more poignant ones for me is, as a non-religious person, if I'm in therapy with somebody and they bring up something religious, if they're applying it to themselves, I'm not going to sit there and question their religion, even though I don't believe it to have any benefit whatsoever for me. If it does them, then fine. If they were to ask me, you agree with that, right? I'll tell them straight up, no, I don't, but I'm glad that it's benefiting you. I'm not going to sit there and lie about it or try to evade an honest human question. So that's my response. It's the same thing with alcohol. I've had patients. Now, mind you, I've worked in the prison system for the better part of 17 years at this point. I would say that like 99% of the people I've worked with have substance abuse issues, and it has come up several times, the fact that, you're probably going to go home today and have an ice cold beer. I wish I could do that. And I'll be like, yeah, it's kind of the beauty of not being in prison is that I get to do that, and it opens up doors. It feels more real, I think it's driven largely by what your ultimate goal of being a therapist is, right? And what the impact you hope to have on your patients. And I don't think that we need to allow that to be defined by somebody who wrote a book about it. So that's my take.
Yeah, I mean, you work in a very relevant field for this issue, and I can totally understand Owen's concern and hesitation, whereas I work in sustainability research, and so it's just not related to problematic alcohol use in terms of like the field itself and solving those types of problems. So I don't have any reason to hide it. It's funny, though. I often don't need to bring it up because everyone else wants to tell everyone for me.
Yep.
So like I went to this work thing the other day and I met some people at my newer, like the company that acquired us that I'd never met before. And everyone's like, I heard you're a home brewer. And so it's like, I don't even have to tell anyone at this point because like all my coworkers want to tell everyone else for me, apparently. I'm like, yeah, that's me. So definitely not trying to hide it. And if anything, I can't hide from it at this point.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. On the kind of more basic level, I kind of went deeper into my philosophy of therapy and stuff there. I was just on the phone. I'm a supervisor now, so I actually don't do patient care. I haven't for the last 2 years. But I have to call in patients every once in a while for certain evaluations and whatnot. But I supervise the clinicians now. And I got on the phone. I think it was with our CEO or it was somebody higher up in management at my institution, and this was just on Thursday and they were, something came up and I was like, oh yeah, something about beer. And they're like, oh yeah, man, somebody mentioned about, that you've been homebrewing for like 2 decades and you have a podcast. And then I was like, what the hell? Like, how did you hear about that? You're right. It gets talked about when we're not around. So that's just a reality of this, but I really do appreciate your question, Owen. And I, like you, Jordan, I really understand, I feel like I can understand where you're coming from and why some people would be hesitant to want to bring up this perceived vice, right? In the same way, like, we're constantly told in grad school and whatnot that, you don't self-disclose. I disagree with that. And there's good evidence to back up why I disagree with that. I'm not going to get into that here. But I can understand and totally appreciate if somebody is different than me on that and they have a different approach. And so I'm not trying to, the reason I say that is I'm not trying to encourage you to go and be like, hey, everybody, all my patients, I'm going to tell them that I drink beer and homebrew and all that stuff. No, you do what's good for you. There's nobody that I hide pretty much any aspect of my life from. I'm an open book. It makes me feel better. I feel like I can, live in front of myself, as it were. And so I'm happy with the decisions that I've made in my life, and I'm open to changing and all of that. And so I just don't feel like I need to hide anything from anybody. And on that is the last question that we had for this Brü A. That does bring us to the end of our 440th episode. Man, we are, every week we creep closer and closer to that 500 episode mark, which is meaningless ultimately, but still kind of cool. Huge thanks to all of our amazing patrons for supporting us and submitting the questions. These episodes are always such a blast. And Jordan, thanks for joining me this week, man.
Thanks for having me, Marshall.
Yeah. If there's anything you'd like for us to address in a future Brü A episode, consider becoming a patron and we'll almost certainly get to your question. Plus, you get some pretty cool stuff for your support. Otherwise, you can email your questions to feedback@brülosophy.com. Don't forget to follow us on facebook.com/Brülosophy, instagram.com/Brülosophy, and youtube.com/@The Show. And make sure to head to brülosophy.com to keep up with all the fun and beer and brewing stuff that we are up to. The Brülosophy podcast is made possible by the generous support of our sponsors as well as all of our rad listeners. We seriously could not do this without you. Cheers to everyone who has subscribed and left a review of our show. It makes a huge difference. If you haven't yet, please consider doing so. Head over to brülosophy.com/support to view a list of ways you can easily help us to continue producing this podcast. If you want a reward for your support, visit patreon.com/brülosophy. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Brülosophy podcast. Until then, think beer.
Start off the morning with some hot tea, lemon and honey cause it suits my throat. Put some herb in the bowl, yeah, it's homegrown. Ain't gotta go through the middleman no more. Life is good, the likelihood of me.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.